In this video, we're going to talk about some of my thoughts and experiences about things that you should consider when you're getting solar PV installed in your house. This video is going to kind of cover some of the things that both I've realised myself since getting solar installed and things that people have asked me about. So hopefully there may be questions that are on your mind, so they may or may not help you out. I'll just clarify some things you've been thinking about. So first one that I did not think about when I had my solar installed, but it became apparent the day after, is think about where your TV aerial is. If you have a TV aerial in your loft or attic, think about the direction that's pointing in, and if the installation of solar panels is going to obstruct that kind of line of sight of that antenna. So I don't really watch much television, just occasionally put some stuff on for the kids. And the morning after the solar install, I turned on the TV and it said there was no signal. Turned on the other TV, also said no signal, and then it clicked that my TV aerial is in the loft, pointing straight at where those solar panels are. So now I don't have a working TV. So that's just something to keep in mind. So I'm probably not going to do anything about it right now. The option is I might have to move it to the other end of the loft, and we might kind of point enough that it would miss the panels, or really need to move it outside. But as we don't really watch much TV, unless it becomes something impactful, then we'll look at doing something about it. But perhaps this is something that you don't tend to think about until after the case. So if you are a TV watcher, definitely something to keep in mind. Another thing is, obviously, when you've decided you're going to get solar and you've worked with your selected installer to define what equipment you're going to be having, make sure you give some consideration and understand where all of that equipment is going to go. So I'm talking about the inverter, the export meter, if you're going to have batteries, where all that stuff is isolated and everything. And there's a couple of reasons for this. Even though most of these equipment either come with an app or something, there are going to be times that it requires some physical intervention. So for example, majority of the time your inverter is going to work fine, but there's going to be times that it needs a reboot or an update, or it kind of somehow loses its configuration, you need to redo something. And if you have your inverter, say, in a loft space, which can be quite common, that's fine, but can you easily get to the inverter? So if it's on the far wall of your house and you don't have any boards down, so it's not easy for you to walk there, how are you going to do that? So keep those things in mind. Also, you may have your inverter and your export meter, all this stuff in the garage somewhere, that's fine, but perhaps it's in a location you can't easily view. So whenever you need to go and read your export meter to make your fit payment requests, perhaps it's not easy for you to get to, so you've got to move the car and move a load of stuff. So could it be positioned in a way that's going to be more helpful? So give some thoughts to obviously how things are going to look aesthetically, but also think about how you're going to use things in the future, because we tend to forget these things in the excitement of the moment. Warranties. So you should be getting warranties with your deposit, with the install, so like warranties and guarantees, and the products and stuff that you're buying. So make sure you understand and you're getting the paperwork through from that. So some providers may provide this documentation up front. Some of it may happen after you've made the payment. Well, I guess technically when you pay the deposit, you should get some sort of deposit warranty information. Obviously when you made your final payment, then you'll get some third-party warranty for the installation, and then understanding how you're proving purchase of the warranty for things like the inverter and the panels and batteries and all this sort of thing. So typically that might just be retaining the invoice from the people that you've bought it from, or there may be specific ones to the product. So make sure you ask those questions, get it in writing, so just an email and the response, so you're all covered for future, along with any certificates. So especially if you're going to want to have the feed-in tariff, your equipment and the install needs to be MCS certified. So you're going to need that if you want to have the ability to get that small amount of money from the government feed-in tariff schemes. And we'll talk about that in a separate video, but again, things to keep in mind. The other thing, obviously, that sounds obvious, but I read lots online that people have got a certain size solar array, and then they're disappointed that it's not kind of covering all of their usage. So obviously if you work from home, you're going to be consuming more. If you're away a lot, you're going to be consuming less. And you really need to think about the big picture, especially like here in the UK. So for a good half of the year, the weather's pretty shocking. And then in the summer, it's kind of very varied. So I like to look at the things in the kind of worst case scenario. So for, you know, what do I think the minimum this system is going to generate? So like here in the UK, when the weather's pretty poor, I think some days the system may only generate like maybe 4 kilowatts if I'm lucky, right? Or you know, hopefully higher, but that's what you need to think about. So obviously, if you only have a 3 kilowatt system, for example, a 3.68 kilowatt system, then it's never going to generate that in the poor weather, right? It's going to be in the amount of hundreds of watts if you're in the UK. So keep that in mind, and then obviously you need to consider if you're going to go down that DNO route where you're going to put the request in to have a larger system that you have to have those additional approvals for. So keep that in mind as well. Going back to the installer, making sure that you're happy that they're a trustworthy installer and that you're happy that they know what they're doing and they understand the equipment that they're choosing to install. So there are going to be certain installers that will install anything, and that is good and bad. So the good thing about it is if you know what you're interested in, it gives you lots of flexibility, so you can kind of help define and build out the system. But then there is a risk that that installer isn't as knowledgeable about all those components because they're not specializing in a certain area. And obviously then the flip side of that is there may be some installers that only install certain vendors' products and you have no choice. So that may or may not meet your specific requirements. It may mean you have to have multiple inverters versus a singular one. But then the positive can be that if they are kind of subject matter experts on that kit, there's an increased chance that you're going to have a good and happy install. And other things to do, like in the UK, there's websites like Checker Trade and stuff like that. Have a look on those websites, see if other people have rated them. I'm always a little bit skeptical about some of those sites because you don't know if people are legitimate or whatever, so perhaps you may also want to ask people for referrals. What I actually did, I think I mentioned this in previous videos, I obviously did my own research to try and make sure that I was informed as possible. And when I spoke to the various installers, hopefully asked informed questions and gauged their responses based on that. And I also went door knocking. So people that have solar installs, I simply knocked on their door and asked them, you know, are you happy with the install? How's it performing? Do you mind who did it? And then I gather that information and then speak to those people as well. So things to keep in mind. Other thing, if you're concerned about privacy, I guess we all should be, is data collection. So keeping in mind that a lot of these technology and solar installs, batteries and inverters have the ability obviously to collect data and share that data, and a lot of them are also using cloud platforms to give you the versatility of being able to look on your computer or on your phone or any of these things to gather access to that data. So one thing you want to understand is how is that data collected and how is it used and who has access to it. So if I use an example of myself, so as you know from the other videos, I'm using Solar Edge. All of that information from the optimizers and the inverters is sent into the SolarEdge's cloud that enables me to do monitoring. But even though I am the owner of this system and I've paid for everything, I don't have the full admin control of that monitoring on SolarEdge. That's actually done by the installer, and I believe that there's an incentive for installers to kind of offer those SolarEdge products. Now, I went with SolarEdge because I wanted their product. I was not forced or incentivized in that way. So I'm happy with kind of how this is working. I'll talk a bit more about it in the SolarEdge monitoring video. When I say I'm happy, I'm happy that that's just how things are. I still don't understand why the installer has more, well, at least it feels like the installer has more ownership, but that is how it is. And really the theory of that being is that the installer can be very proactive in constantly monitoring your system, make sure it's performing properly, and give you a call proactively to say, hey, look, looks like, you know, your 14th panel on the southeast side, it seems to be malfunctioning. We've ordered a replacement one and they're going to come out. I think these people are so busy, and I don't really think there's any financial incentive for them to be doing that. It's not a managed service or anything, so I don't think that's going to happen. On a similar subject, it's also that discussion of understanding if you're paying for these panels yourself, or if there's panels that are being provided for free or some other kind of variation. So obviously if you buy the panels and everything outright, you should be fully benefiting from everything. So right now in the UK we have those FIT tariffs. They're probably going away in April. Maybe they'll replace something else. Who knows? I think they're a bit busy with Brexit right now. But if you have got free panels, typically what that means is, you know, the owner of that system isn't you, and that owner is benefiting from the feed-in tariff payments, and you're just getting obviously free power when the solar is generating. But you also need to keep that in mind when you come to sell the house. What does that mean for the future buyer? They need to understand, you know, who owns the panels and what the implications are. So probably do a bit more research on that. The other thing to mention about the FIT install that I forgot to mention earlier, but again we'll cover it in a different video, is again, even if you had this MCS accredited install, you also have to have an energy rating of your house, so an EPC rating here in the UK, and you have to have a rating of D or above in terms of energy efficiency. So that's quite common in most houses now. A couple of years ago, all houses, if you're coming up to sell your house, had to have these EPC assessments. But if you have like a rating of E, you're not going to be eligible for FIT unless you do some things to get yourself up to D or above. So keep that in mind as well. And I think that kind of pretty much covers the main things that have been on my mind or people have asked me about in terms of solar. Yeah, I still think this is a good idea. I'm not doing this, I didn't do this because I'm some Save the World ambassador or anything. I am obviously interested in the renewables and trying to, you know, minimize the impact where I can, but really this is hopefully straight up financial decisions, and also there's that kind of good feeling that you're able to generate and you consume your own power as opposed to pulling it from the grid from whatever source they've decided to get it from. Thanks for watching this video. A thumbs up would be really appreciated. If you're interested in other geek type videos, please consider subscribing to Spectrum Geeks. Why not also follow us on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter. And before you leave, why don't you check out one of these other videos that may be of interest. Thanks again for watching.